Hey, this is Scott of thewavecoding.com. Today I'm going to go over a JavaScript asynchronous communication system that uses PHP as the backend. I have 4 different files in this example. You can look at it all on GitHub, which is probably your best bet to understand it. I'm going to go over stuff in a little bit of detail, so you can check it out in this video as well. First off, we have Async Manager, which is a JavaScript prototype, which is basically a class, has different functions inside. We'll look at it in more detail in a bit. Also have the PHP script. In this example, I have 2 different actions that I can call asynchronously. One is to get a timestamp, and the second one is to get a random number. In the case of the random number, I also take more post data for the range of the number. Here's the HTML for this example, which we'll look at the actual page in a bit. It's basically 2 buttons with some divs that can hold different information. And here is a little bit of extra JavaScript for the 2 examples. One here is the timestamp part as well as the random number. Each one has 2 functions, one to call or create and call the async manager code, and then one is to receive a callback from the async manager once everything is finished and we get some data. So let's go to the example itself. When I have the timestamp, just click on it, and then you can do it multiple times, and it'll update multiple times. And the random number, as you can see, works as expected. You can see it's a little bit slow because I actually have a delay in my PHP code. Oh, actually, I should also mention I'm using XAMPP as my internal server. It's really simple. You just put it in a directory and start it up, and then it has the whole web server ready to just do some basic code on, test things out. So let's go to the main prototype. See the 4 different parameters, which are related right here. So for this example, the timestamp, we send a div name, which is updated in the status. If you saw here at the top, it says loading. That's that div that's getting updated. Let's go back to the code, and here is the callback function. This is where the timestamp gets pulled out and pushed into the proper div. Then we also have the PHP script name to call and the post data. So in this case, to do post data, you need 2 different variables for each bit of data. One, we specify the name of the information, and then 2, we specify what it is actually. But in the case of the random number one, we have the action, which is the same. Then we have a range bottom and range top. So that's how my prototype works, is with those pairs of information. See the 4 different parameters up top in the prototype. We save that information for future use throughout these other functions. Here is where you update status from that div that gets passed in. Then here is where the do XML HTTP, if I can say it properly, request object is created. It attempts to create objects based on the different browsers. You've got the Mozilla, Firefox, and Chrome, which uses standard method. And you've got Internet Explorer, which uses its own way, potentially, at least in the older versions. So I'll just leave that code in there. Then we have the send data function, which is most of the meat of the code here. You make a new return, new XML HTTP request object, you push it into this own prototypes instance, which I have actually up here, which I'm saving this keyword as a variable so I can pass data between all of these functions. Then we also create the callback information, which is just going to send or call that second function in the example.js. Basic, pretty simple there. It also takes any states that are not good, and it will tell the user that there was an issue with the status div. And here is the actual post that happens down here as long as this variable is not null. So just view extra checks in that case. Then we do a post instead of a get, of course, sending it asynchronously, and we specify the type of information. And we push all of those pairs of variables into a block and then send it to the PHP script. We just use the escape function in JavaScript to make sure that it works properly. So that's about it, really. Actually, I just go over a little bit more cool stuff. So this is Firefox. If we go into the developer area and developer toolbar, you can pop this up and then just reload the page. And now if we, usually it's defaulted to this console tab, but if you click network, see all of the things that happen in this page once it loads. You can see it's loading our manager JavaScript, it's loading our example. But when you press one of these buttons, you can see that the post happened asynchronously. We can look at it in detail, which is really helpful. And then we can actually see what information we sent. So in this case, action times get timestamp. And if we do a random number one, click on it here, and we get action, get random int, range bottom, range top. Pretty cool. This is very, very helpful for debugging asynchronous stuff. Actually, I should also show you the PHP script while I'm here. In this video, we can now, of course, look at the code in detail on GitHub. So PHP script starts off, it's ready to send back XML data. That's why we have to use this header function to do that. And when we start the XML response just in a simple string variable, we check the post to make sure the action exists because that's our key piece of information that we need. We say if the action is the timestamp, get a timestamp, send it back in this XML tag. Also get the random int. Then we also check for the two different extra pieces of post data, the range bottom, range top. If those exist, we see if they're numbers, and then we send the response back with the rand function. That's basically it. We found this useful. Of course, this is best for probably internal websites where you don't really have to care about security. If you want to make things secure, you'll have to augment the PHP, of course, and then deal with sending information without encryption. So probably HTTPS with some extra login encryption and all that fun stuff. That's basically it. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks. Scott of thewavecoding.com.